So today I'm sitting with Abigail Sanders. She goes by Abby. She's a dietitian and lactation consultant in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And she started out in working with WIC, and she developed a passion for breastfeeding moms. And here we are today. She's a certified lactation consultant. She's also a dietitian. She holds a master's degree and recently just became certified. So welcome, Abby, and thank you for joining us.
Hey, yes, of course.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
Yes, so I am a lactation consultant and now a dietitian as well. I do virtual lactation help for prenatal and postpartum, plus going back to work and school. And then also I just recently added on the dietitian aspect where I help with preconception, hormone regulation, prenatal with fitness and your nutrients, and then postpartum and starting solids. So
Awesome.
I've started doing that. I've had my private practice for about a year now, so it's going pretty well.
Cool. It's so amazing to me. I started out in social media on my platform, and so many dietitians are doing so many different things. And I think like there's so much diversity in your field, and it's so
Yeah.
cool to see that. And interestingly, because I did a course, an Instagram course, that was started by a dietitian, I've gotten to kind of like meet different dietitians doing different things. So it's really, really cool. But you struck me because breastfeeding is such a passion for me. And I really want to empower moms, especially first time moms, to have a great experience breastfeeding. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you for being here with us.
Yes, and support is the number one for breastfeeding. So it's wonderful that you have found this area as well.
Okay. So first question,
Yeah.
what services do you offer?
So I offer mainly the counseling aspect. I do help a little bit with like relactation and latching issues that you are able to do virtually. So if I don't feel like I will be able to help a mom, I refer them to someone in their area. But I help with pain, I help with increased supply and relactation mainly, and then just helping with their diets if they're having any issues with that as well.
Okay. So it's actually good that you talked about those things because those are some of the things we're going to cover. And one of the things that I hadn't actually planned on addressing was relactation. So we'll definitely visit that because I've had questions from moms about that. And I actually considered it, I think it was like, it's like a year and a half out. And I was like, oh, I wish we had tried this now that my daughter actually knows what to do with a breast. And, and that's kind of how I got to read about it. I ended up not doing it, but I've had questions from moms who are interested in doing it for whatever reason, like their child has cancer and they can't get vaccinated and they want to try to give breast milk. So we'll chat a little bit about that. But my first
Perfect.
question is, so for me, I felt like I wasn't prepared for breastfeeding. I felt like I have always been a planner, planned everything out except breastfeeding. And how I knew that was because when I talked to my OB, she told me about the breastfeeding class at the hospital, and then it ended up being canceled. And I just never, and then she was like, oh, there's a virtual, online course that you can take. And I just never did it. And then I was like, oh, it can't be that hard. I'll just put the baby on my boob and she'll latch and life goes on. And that ended up not being the case. So my question for you is, how can a mom prepare for breastfeeding, especially right now when in-person classes are not available or possible?
Yes, so that is one thing that I've seen over the years is even I used to teach breastfeeding classes in person and I had to go to so many for my cert to be able to get it. And they teach you so much in an hour or two and you just don't remember it by the time baby comes, even if you did attend the class. So I developed a online course actually that is self-paced and you always have it. And it's very much titled to each type of different thing that you're going to want to refer back to. And I find that to be one of the better ways of doing it because you can always refer back to it and you don't just have a PowerPoint printout. Because the online classes, we really just throw so much at you in an hour and a half and hope that you can remember it when the day comes. So that is one of the ways I personally think would be best for moms. I have seen a lot of free online classes since COVID has started that people can just search for on Facebook as well. But I do have an online course that is self-paced, and it has videos and graphics and everything you may ever know. And that would be good for a lot of moms in their 20s and 30s that use technology.
All right. So I will definitely be linking Abby's website and her courses to anybody that might be interested. I've looked at her website, great resource. I think if you're really considering breastfeeding, you should definitely at least consider an online course. And she's here with all the intel. So definitely look into that.
Yes.
Okay. So second question is latch, latch, latch. And I just love that, like, that is your thing.
Yeah.
You're like your business name is Latch with Nutrition, but I would hear latch 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 and I'm like, how hard can that be? So how do you know if your latch is correct?
Yes, and latch is sounds so easy and it can be so complex, and it's just crazy how complex it can be. But basically, to know that you have a good latch is that you feel no pain. If you feel pain when baby's latching, you need to remove baby, try to put baby back on. If you have pain, then that means that baby is kind of just nibbling at the nipple and not getting any milk.
Mhm.
They have to be fully on to the breast to be able to get milk out. So you have a good latch if you're feeling no pain, but your baby is actively suckling. If your baby's just sitting there and kind of using it as a pacifier or just chomping, your baby's not going to get milk. But you also can be able to hear them swallow as well. So no pain. You're going to hear me say that this whole time. Pain is not good. So no pain, and your baby looks like they're drinking milk. So that's like how I kind of explain it. If they look like how a human drinks, then you're probably doing it pretty well.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up the pain aspect. So recently, a friend of mine actually reached out to me about her friend who newborn baby, 3 day old. She's like, she's really struggling. Her breasts are hurting. She's crying. Baby's crying. Everybody's crying. And I'm like, it's not supposed to hurt. And she was like, well, everybody just told her, prepare for the pain. And, you know, I was just like, I don't have the intel on that, but all I know is that she needs to find a lactation consultant to come and evaluate her latch because that does not sound right. And I'm so glad you brought up pain because I think we, especially like first time moms, like we're always told, yeah, it's gonna hurt really bad. I actually remember advice I was given by a coworker, like your nipples are gonna hurt, like take a dry washcloth and like desensitize your nipples. And I was like, okay, that does not sound right, but she's got 3 kids, so whatever. I'm so glad you brought up the pain aspect because, like you said, it's not supposed to hurt. So if it's hurting, something's not right.
Yes, you should feel a little tug, but you shouldn't feel any pain. So it should feel just like your nipple is moving, but no pain at all. Pain is something that the lactation consultant can, and it's so sad sometimes because I'll do a consult, and how I fix it is just one movement. And I'm
Wow.
like, and where everyone's like, okay, this is better. And I'm like, oh my goodness, all you had to do is move like by 1 degree, and you won't feel any pain anymore. So just trying to move around and move baby up, down, trying to just relieve that pain before you even get to a lactation consultant can help you as well. But yeah, no pain.
Okay. What are some must-haves that you recommend for brand new moms new to breastfeeding? Like, what are some things that you think are essential, bring with you to the hospital or have as soon as you get home on your first day?
You don't need anything to breastfeed. Support is the main thing that is encouraged. You don't need the fancy nipple creams. You don't need the breast pump. You don't need the nipple shields. All that whole aisle aren't necessities. You may recommend if there's an issue down the line, but really just support and maybe an ice pack for when your milk comes in. You may need just a little bit of ice for the engorgement that comes on day 3, but there's no must haves other than you and your baby and your support system.
I'm glad you brought that up because especially first time moms, again, you're bombarded with all these things. You have to have this and you have to have this and you should get this and you should get that. And then you come home and you have so many things. And I tell new moms, it's like, just weigh it out, because if your journey doesn't become successful, then you have all these things that you're not going to use. And if your journey is successful and you find adjuncts that you can use, then these are the things maybe you can consider buying. Because what happens, I feel like breastfeeding becomes a luxury problem, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's almost like, especially social media, like you see these new moms and they have all these things, and it's almost like, okay, so if you don't have the resources, are you going to fail, right? When all you need is you, your breast, and your baby's mouth. So
Exactly.
yeah, and then if you do run into problems, then you can consider, those other things.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you for bringing that up.
It becomes
Okay.
overwhelming for them when everyone's like, you need this, 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 and this. And you stare at all this stuff and you forget that it's really just you and your baby. It's not you, your baby, and the whole aisle out Target.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need everything. And I think working in WIC, so I used to work with low income families, you get creative. You don't need the big pillow. You don't need the fancy pump. You don't need the nipple cream. You just need you, your baby, and things that are laying around your house.
Totally agree. So like for me, everybody recommended all these nipple creams, because I ended up exclusively pumping. But the one thing that worked perfectly for my nipples was food grade coconut oil, which we already had in the pantry. And
Hmm.
I would just scoop up some and put it in a little container. And that's all I used the whole time I was pumping for a year.
Yeah, you can
And
use Vaseline. Just
yeah,
wipe it off before baby goes back on. The best thing for your nipples is actually your breast milk.
yeah, yeah,
Because of what's all makes up breast milk, it fixes any type of irritation or cut or anything you may have while you're trying to figure it out. It's the best product for yourself is your own breast milk.
I totally agree. I actually, I think a couple of times I had those blebs, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I would just kind of squeeze my nipples, get some milk, and kind of put just all over the nipple. And
Mhm.
that seemed to help like easily. And everybody says breast milk like fixes everything. I saw this meme yesterday, and it's like, can somebody squirt some breast milk on 2020?
Yes.
It's like,
Everything.
yeah, yeah. Like I had there was a time, I think 6 months in, and I had a really bad like bronchitis, and I got put on antibiotics. And so I was like, I'm not dumping this milk. So I just pumped, and I saved it, and I like used it for my daughter's baths because her eczema like would flare up here and there. And I just would use it in her bath water, and it helped. So yeah, breast milk cures everything.
Yes.
Okay, so next question is, when does milk come in? And what does that actually mean?
So when milk comes in, and it's really a term that I hate, but everyone uses it, it just makes sense. It comes in on typically day 3 after delivery. And what happens is that it's when your progesterone levels drop and your prolactin and oxytocin levels increase after the delivery of your baby and the delivery of your placenta. And that tells your body that it's time to start making the milk in abundance. You actually start making your milk at 16 weeks, sorry. At 16 weeks, you start making your milk. And so that's why some people leak during their pregnancy. But when you start with that decrease and increase of hormones is when the fluids start increasing and your body's just like, we need to make so much milk because now we have a baby that we have to feed. So that's what it is. That's when you start feeling the engorgement. So that's why I mentioned the ice packs. And so it just, when everything starts to increase and works with your hormone levels, your body just knows what it needs to do.
So my experience was, I was induced at 39, and actually technically I wasn't induced because I went in for an induction, got Cervidil, but never actually needed Pitocin because my daughter runs on her own schedule, and my water ruptured in the middle of the night 3 hours before I was supposed to start Pitocin. So fast forward, baby comes, they tell me to put baby on the boob, nothing's coming out, and it was day 1 and 2. the morning we were supposed to leave, I just didn't have a great experience with the lactation consultants in the hospital. But the last morning, I was like, when they come in, I want baby awake, put the baby on the boob, show me what I need to be doing, right? And so the lady, she was an angel. She basically like had me squeeze my nipples and get some colostrum on a little bit of like a little spoon and put it like just feed the baby. And I was like, wow, I wish somebody had told me this 2 days ago. I mean, the day before yesterday, because Tuesday was when I had the baby. This was Thursday morning. And I was just like, I thought I had no milk. And then she's like, no, you have colostrum, and this is how you can get it into the baby. So my experience was more like, I wish I had been more of an advocate for myself, because the first day when the baby came and the second day, the lactation consultant, another one did come, but the baby was asleep and she just asked me a bunch of questions, and I should have said, you know what, let me wake the baby up, show me what I need to be doing, right? Because it's an action-based experience.
Yeah.
So I will say, like, I was like, oh, I don't have any milk. And then she was like, oh yeah, you have milk. So that leads me to another question. I see these posts on social media where these moms like express breast milk before they deliver. But then I remember reading these things like, oh, you shouldn't stimulate your nipples because you can go into labor. What is the, I guess, consensus on that?
So I would say it's about a year and a half ago, because that used to be what I would say too, like, don't do anything, you're in induced labor. And about a year and a half ago, they started doing research that shows that that's not the case, that
Okay.
you can hand express, but pumping before a baby is born will increase your chances of going into preterm labor, but hand expressing isn't. So there's just like a very fine line and it's all new research. So it's not like completely massive amount of people that they're doing this with. But you can do a little bit of expression if you see that you are leaking a little bit, but don't full on pump, because pumping and breastfeeding causes contractions of your uterus, if you remember that from pumping. And so you don't really want that whole process to happen when baby's not ready to come, because like your daughter, they have their own schedule.
And so if you do decide to do that, how do you do it?
So hand expression, the best way to do that is you really just put your hand in a C around your breast, and you just kind of squeeze down. You don't squeeze forward. You want to compress your breast straight in, and then you rotate that around, and that is how you do hand expression. If you take it and you go downwards, you're blocking the milk ducts, and milk won't be released.
Okay.
You just compress into your breast.
Just compressing the nipple. I mean, compressing the actual breast tissue, not the nipple.
Yes, ma'am. And so that is how you can release the milk from the ducts rather than blocking the milk from actually reaching the nipple.
And then do you just store that milk in the freezer? Like, what do you do with the milk?
So with the milk, you can, it depends on what week you are before baby is born. If you're at 39 weeks, you can just leave it in your refrigerator. But if you are like 36, 37, 38, put it in the freezer. Milk is good in your refrigerator up to about 5 days, and it's good in your freezer up to 6 months. So depending on what week you are and when you start leaking, depends on if you would put it in a refrigerator or a freezer. And one thing that I don't see as one of the questions that's really cool about breast milk compared to the formula use is that formula is a one and done, and breast milk, you can still use that same bottle if you have a little bit left. So that is one of the safety things when it comes to formula, is you need to throw it away after baby has used that bottle, even if there's some left. But with breast milk, it is a protection of itself. So that's really cool if you need to reuse it 2 times.
Okay. All right. So we're going to switch gears, and now the milk has come in. And first question is, what is a letdown and what causes letdown pain?
So a letdown is the release of your milk. So it is the increase in oxytocin level. And so that is what releases the milk from the ducts and moves towards the nipple when baby is at your breast. Letdown pain, it's just kind of like that surge of oxytocin and that feeling of the milk moving through your body. So you can kind of think about that as when you're feeling like pain from when you like scrape your knee and the rush of white blood cells and red blood cells. It's just kind of like that pain of your body reacting to something. Letdown pain isn't really something that we can fix. There are some pain management clinics in the US that can kind of help with that a little bit, but I'm not specialized in that. But that's kind of just that one quick rush, and then there should be no pain after that. And only some people, about 10% of the population, feel that letdown pain.
I remember the first time I felt it, I was actually in the car with my husband, and I don't even know where we were coming from. And I was like, oh my God, I think I'm having a heart attack.
Yeah, rush.
Yeah, because I just felt like spread on my chest, and I was like, oh my God. And then it just went away, and I was like, oh, that was weird. And then the next time it happened, I had just gotten on the pump, and I guess, I just switched to let down mode, and then I felt it. I was like, oh, that was the feeling. It's the same exact feeling. Um, which I didn't really touch a lot about this in my questions with you, but I did end up in this rabbit hole on Google when I experienced this. So when I noticed, especially like maybe 3 months into my pumping journey, every time I would like get ready to pump, I already had some anxiety around it, but I remember the first time I felt this like weird sensation. Like I started to pump and the milk started coming in, and I just felt like a rash of like sadness. And then it went away. And then I started Googling like sadness during pumping. And then I was like, you know what, sadness, maybe let me see if like nursing moms have it. And then that's how I came into the dysphoric milk ejection reflex. Tell us a little bit about that. And what are your experiences with that, if you've had any moms that have that?
So I haven't had too much experience with that. I did read up a little bit about it when I was going through my training. And it's just my understanding of it is just the hormone imbalance that occurs during that. So basically everything that has to do with your breastfeeding has to do with hormones. So it's just that quick rise and decrease of different hormones that can cause that. It also, I believe, I don't want to say it wrong, but I believe that also has a correlation with your increase in risk of PPD, postpartum depression, as well, because of that quick release of hormones. And most doctors, at least in my state, are trained on helping you with the regulations of those hormones during feedings.
Absolutely. And one thing I did figure out is that it's not PPD, but like you said, there's dopamine involved in this. And so if you're just having these like ups and downs of your dopamine and oxytocin, you should definitely be looking out for that, because if you're experiencing the sadness post pumping or post nursing, it's something to look into. It was just a weird thing for me, because I was like, as soon as I was done, I felt like it was gone. And then I just was like, I thought like when your milk, drops, like you have euphoria and you're like super happy. And I was like, that's not how I feel.
Yeah.
So it was interesting when I posted about this, like I got some comments from moms that were like, that's what I felt. And I didn't have PPD, but that's kind of how I felt about when, I would nurse my baby, which I think Hollywood in general and the media like does a poor job of representing breastfeeding and like going into labor, right? Like the classic Hollywood thing is, your water breaks and it's a huge rush of water. And then the classic breastfeeding is you put the baby on the breast and you just look in their eyes and you're just so happy and it's so easy. They just latch, it's like, that's not real life. So I think Hollywood needs some reality lactation consultants.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so the next question is, and this was also something I struggled with. How long does it take for your milk supply to peak? Like I got a lot of feedback. It's like, I was getting discouraged I wasn't getting enough milk, or in what I thought was enough milk. And everybody would say, oh, wait till you get to this day. And, then you can see if your milk has peaked. So how long does it take for that to happen?
So your milk doesn't actually peak. There
Okay.
is no day in your baby's life that you have the most milk you'll ever have, and then
Okay.
it'll decrease down. Milk supply is supposed to be regulated by baby. So how often baby feeds, how well baby is at removing the milk, or how often you are pumping
Hmm.
determines your supply. So there's
Okay.
no day, there's no like baby turns 16 days old and you're going to have this massive supply on this day and then you'll never see it again.
Yeah.
That's not really how it works. It's all a regulatory
Okay.
system with baby. Sometimes women don't have the full supply because of some medical conditions, how their delivery was, and then also just how they react to pumps. Pumping, you don't get the same amount of milk removal with pumping as you do baby.
Okay.
You get like probably about 90% of it,
Hmm.
and then just how well baby is latched. So it all kind of works together, and there's so
Okay.
many different things. That's why people, my intake forms for my stuff take someone like 10 minutes, because you have to know all these different things that don't seem like they would relate to your milk supply or your feeding,
Hmm.
but they do have some way could affect something. So there's so many different factors. C-sections takes a long time for your milk to peak. Um, if you had a retained placenta and you don't know it, you don't have enough supply. Having an epidural affects it. Like so many different things can affect your supply that no one teaches
Gotcha.
you about before you go into your your
Yeah, I
delivery.
was like waiting for the golden. I think it was like somebody told me like 2 weeks. So just wait 2 weeks, and then week two got there, and I was like, it's still the same amount, And I was like doing all the things like the middle of the night pump, and trying to make sure I expressed everything, and still I was like, okay, this is it. This is it for us. But one thing I will say, like my my awakening, I guess, as far as pumping and breastfeeding in general, was the realization that I just needed what my baby needed, right? Like, I think social media, especially, you see these like stash posts, and like, honestly, like, social media is great, but it's also sad because you see these moms are posting like, oh, look at my freezer stash. And you're like, I don't have a freezer stash. I mean, I remember there were days when like my nanny was waiting for me to finish pumping so we could feed the baby. And what I realized was all I needed was what my baby needed, right? I don't need a freezer stash. I don't need to have this thick milk, I remember that like thick milk plug in the bottle. And I was like, oh, I'm not making that. And really like just realize that what my baby needs, my baby will tell me what she needs, right? I
Yeah,
don't need to have this like excess. And I do try to tell moms that, like, listen, it's nice to have a stash for going back to work, but your baby is not looking in the freezer to see
mm-mm.
how much milk you have stored. So like give yourself grace, because I was a just enougher. So I just had enough milk to keep her fed constantly, right? And I
And that's
did have
really
to supplement
what
with
you
formula.
have.
But yeah, just there's no like there's nothing about having a stash that makes you a better mom.
No, and I hate that the bottles are all the 8-ounce bottles, 8 to 10,
Yes.
because you don't pump 8 ounces. Like that's not how it goes. You
Yeah.
pump 2 ounces, or you pump three, or you pump one. You don't really, most women don't reach that 8-ounce pump, and they
Yes.
see that bottle and they're like, I'm not making enough because the bottles are only 8 ounces.
So I actually stayed with the smaller bottles, and then what I started to do was just like cover the bottles when I was pumping, because then it took away the stress of like, do I have enough milk? Is am I getting enough? And then I would just like, once I was done, I would take them down and I would like just move on. And I even stopped like tracking how much milk I was pumping, because I kind of became obsessed with the numbers.
Yeah.
And it was like, I never went through a day where my daughter wasn't fed, right? So it was like, even the day when I was like, okay, this is the last day I'm pumping, it wasn't like she was like, oh, I'm starving. And it was okay. I never really had a freezer stash and it was fine.
That's actually what I recommend to all my pumping moms is to cover the bottles.
Yeah,
Cover the bottles, drink some water, watch TV, read a book, forget that you're pumping, and that is probably the best thing for you because it
I totally
relaxes
agree.
you and you're not like being completely OCD type A on your pumping.
Yeah.
Because that's who I am. So
Yep. Same, same, same. And what was funny too was, like in the beginning, I think I had like a hard time like explaining to family what was happening. And then I realized like later, like my mom was like, I think what's interesting like with your journey is that you're able to figure out how much milk you're getting in the baby with pumping. And I was like, oh, thank you for like seeing a positive in it.
yeah. And that's a lot of women choose to pump so they can see. They
Yeah,
just don't believe that their baby is getting enough from by just breastfeeding because they don't see what their
you
baby's
don't
eating.
see it.
So
Yeah.
they're like, I just feel better if I pump. And I'm like,
But the
power to
reality is, that baby knows what they need, right?
Mhm.
And I
It's
think
just
we
mom
don't give them enough credit.
yeah. Baby will let you know if they need some more.
Yeah, yeah. The crying will definitely inform you.
Yes.
Okay, so what are some things that you can do to either increase your milk supply or at least keep it at a steady amount?
So there is so the only things that are proven are milk removal and fluid.
Okay.
All the herbs that are out there that they say work, drink I hear people say that they do drink beer, eat oatmeal, take herbs. There's not really any research to indicate that. It's just all this worked for people, but we don't know why. So it
Hmm.
doesn't work for everyone. So really keeping your fluids up, and it's any type of fluid. You don't have to drink. People think that you have to drink milk to make milk. If you hate milk, don't drink it. If you like flavored water instead of real, regular, pure water, go for it. You just have to keep yourself hydrated and continue to remove milk from your breast in any way that you prefer. It's
Um,
really, really proven ways.
so like the fluids too, I remember everybody's like, drink this brand, energy drink and drink this. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot of calories.
Mhm.
And one thing for me that I found was that I don't actually mind drinking water, but when I didn't feel like drinking water, I would just put like noon electrolyte tablets in the water. And then people would be like, oh, get the Starbucks pink drink. And I got that drink and I was like, man, that's a lot of sugar. So I feel like a lot of like the do this, do that, it's not really that those things are much more effective. You're just getting more calories in and you're getting more volume in.
So yeah, any way that you prefer to drink something is perfectly fine. If you like the pink drink from Starbucks, I personally think it's too much sugar for myself too. But I drink Gatorade a couple times a week, just because I work out, and so it's kind of the same thing as that. You do need some salt, you do need some potassium, and you need some fluids in any way that you prefer. I had women when I was at the clinic that only drink Mountain Dew, which is horrible for you, but they kept up their supply because it does have some.
That's,
I mean, it's a liquid, and they're
yeah.
like, "This is how I work." I was like, "Your baby is not going to sleep well."
Yeah. I'm like, how are you going to use it with all that Mountain Dew?
But
Oh, Lord.
however you want to get that fluid in, you do that and continue to remove milk from your breast. One thing that I will say that you commented on earlier about not skipping that night feeding, I tell all my moms to skip one night feeding.
Hmm.
If you aren't sleeping,
Yeah.
then you aren't your best self, and so it affects your baby and it affects your mood. And so skipping one feeding if you're not getting engorged by skipping the feeding is what's honestly the best for you. You need at least 4 hours straight of sleep to function
Yeah.
and to be your best self. So that can also decrease your supply by increasing your stress and lack of sleep. So one of the first things I tell all my moms is to skip one feeding at night, hand the baby in a bottle off to your partner if you are doing any bottles, and get some sleep, please.
And that was like, I was fortunate because I had more storage capacity. And so I could go overnight without getting engorged. And I remember the first night I said, okay, I'm going to sleep through the night. My mom was here and my husband and my mom split the night. I was like, I woke up the next morning and I had so much milk and I wasn't engorged, but I was like so rested. It was like the angels were singing,
Yes.
and you're right. Like if, and I tell moms that like, if that middle of the night pump is taking away your sanity and your joy, what's more important, that you get a certain amount of milk or that you're ready to be a mom when you wake up in the morning
Yeah.
and you make that decision?
I am all about simplicity when it comes to feeding. If you add in all these different rules, this massive breastfeeding plan, you have to be on this regulation. Like most of the time when moms come to me with that, I like throw it out the window. And I'm like, we're doing this the easiest way possible,
Possible.
because that is the way that's going to make you reach your goals, want to reach your goals and be happy. And your happiness is the most important thing, because you can't take care of your baby if you are miserable.
Totally agree. All right. Now we went through the beautiful parts. Now we're gonna go through the painful, ugly parts.
Yeah.
Talk to us about engorgement.
So engorgement, they say it's natural to have engorgement on day 3, because engorgement is an inflammation of the breast. Your body, especially if you're first time mom, your body has no idea what's going on. You just delivered a baby, which your body's never done before, and then now you're making all this milk in your breast, and your breast never really had milk. It had the capacity of it, but then it started making milk, and now your hormone regulations are going all out of whack, and you're making an abundant to your body an abundant amount. So engorgement is just really an inflammation. It's natural to have it in the first week or two, and your body tends to regulate after that and be like, okay, we're making milk every day. This isn't this big deal anymore. But if you are having engorgement for long periods of time and it's painful, you feel like your breasts are rock hard, that's when we need to start removing milk and using ice packs. Ice packs are way better for inflammation than the heat ones, and a lot of people
Interesting.
get all that mixed up. They want to use one rather than the other. And so ice packs help with the engorgement. Warmth helps move the milk. So that's kind of how I put that. So ice packs, removing milk, and I would expect it around day 3 to 5.
Okay.
But after that, your body should start figuring it out a little bit better. And engorgement is scary because it's painful, but it's just your body trying to figure out what's going on and how best to make milk and feed your baby.
Gotcha. Next question is painful nipples. And you did talk about, what you definitely shouldn't be having painful nipples. You need to get that evaluated. But how do you manage painful nipples?
So if you are feeling pain, so the best way to manage painful nipples is to stop it. If you have been breastfeeding and you have dealt with the pain, then that's a different story, and I'll go over it. But if you are feeling a painful nipple when you latch your baby, you want to take baby off immediately. And the safest way to do that is to take your pinky and stick it in the side of their mouth and release the suction. If you are feeling a painful nipple and you're wanting to take your baby off and you're just kind of move your baby off, you're going to make the pain worse because the baby's still suctioned on. And so it's kind of like whenever you use those suctioning things on like windows to hang planters, when you
Mhm.
try to just pull it off, it takes a lot of work and force, and you see like it trying to stay. That's what baby's doing. So releasing the suction prevents the pain. If you have been having painful nipples and you've been just dealing with the pain throughout the feedings, and now you have a raw nipple after, your breast milk is the best way to help with that. It helps relieve the pain, helps relieve the redness. If it caused a cut or a bruise, it helps heal that. If not, the coconut oil and stuff like that can help too. But as soon as you feel pain, take that baby off, and that will help relieve and prevent long-term pain from your nipples.
Okay, up next is mastitis. What are some signs and symptoms of mastitis, and how do you actively prevent mastitis from happening?
So mastitis it feels like the flu. So you get fever, you get chills, you get red heat off your breast in a certain area. And best way to prevent that is to remove milk. So if you are normally pumping every 4 hours and then now you're going on a flight and you went like 8 to 10 hours, that's how you get mastitis. It's engorgement, but for a prolonged period of time without any help with relieving the pain. How we treat mastitis is your doctor prescribes you with the antibiotic and you continue to breastfeed. A lot of perception is that you stop breastfeeding because you're on this antibiotic and your milk is now, people perceive that milk is bad milk, but you need to continue to feed, continue to pump. The type of antibiotic they give you is okay with breastfeeding. And so just continue to remove milk from your breast helps prevent and relieve the mastitis. But you also do need the antibiotic because it is an infection in your body.
Well, I'm thinking, I didn't have to worry about COVID in my time, but now it's like
You can get it mixed up.
you're like, okay, I have fever and chills.
Fever
Just
chills.
check your boobs, check your breasts, and make sure.
I feel like I don't feel well. Yeah, all the
Yeah,
stuff now can be COVID.
yeah,
But COVID does not have increased heat and redness on the breast.
and your breasts, yeah.
So that's how we
You have
can
to clarify that. So you mentioned also like medication during breastfeeding, and there's a lot of like pump and dump, around what medications to take. What resource do you recommend for moms? Like if you're going to take a certain medication, what resource do you recommend for moms to use to figure that out?
So there is a man called, I don't remember his last name's Hale. I have his books. But there is a website and it's a guy that only does research on breast milk and medications. And he has a website and you can just type the website in and you can type in your medication and it tells you if your medication is fine.
Yeah.
Most of the time I'm trying to look it up. Most of the time, your lactation consultant can tell you what's okay and what's not. Sometimes your doctor is up to date, is Thomas Hell. Medication and Mother's Milk is his website.
Okay.
And so he does only research on it. And most of the time, your doctor is not up to date on that because they just have so much they need to know. Knowing all the different types of medications that are safe is not on the top of their to-do list. So you can ask them to look it up for you, or you can get your lactation consultant to do it as well and send the recommendation in to their doctor for it.
Okay.
But most medications are fine. There's only very little that aren't, and it's most of the time like cancer medications, like severe illness medications that aren't okay with breastfeeding.
Okay. And I'll include that website in the show notes as a resource too.
Perfect.
Okay, next up is pumping. How do you select the correct flange size when you're pumping, especially if you're exclusively pumping, because you're going to be using
Yeah.
them all the time?
So there are great graphics on, especially on Instagram for it, and they're in my course as well. But the
Okay.
main thing that you need to know when it comes to the flange is that when you begin pumping, you don't want your nipple touching the edges.
Okay.
And then you also obviously then before you start pumping, you don't want your nipple to not fit into the flange. And that's because your nipple will expand during the pumping session and you don't want that irritation. So most pumps come with two different sizes. And so kind of go between those two. And if they aren't, then you can easily get the other sizes at the store. But most people are 24 millimeter, which is the standard size. But so you just don't want it touching the edges. And you also don't want it while you're pumping to like send your areola into the cylinder, because that will cause irritation on the areola as well.
Okay.
So that's kind of how you pick it out for yourself, is just put it on if your nipple is not touching the edges and it feels like it would be like a good comfortable fit, like when you put your jeans on. Um, that's perfect. But you don't want it too big or too small. And if you're concerned about it, there's graphics to help, and your doctor should be able to help you with that. So you don't have to pay for a lactation visit just for them to tell you that it's fine or not. And then, so that's pretty much when it comes to the flange size. Sometimes I recommend women to put some like coconut oil or Vaseline on the edges so they just don't get irritation from the plastic, because it is plastic in the skin, to kind of help with relieve some of that movement as well.
Okay. And when we talk about jeans fitting, we're not talking about COVID time. So,
Yeah. So like,
not the COVID-19 pounds and then you're trying to put on your jeans, but regular times.
how you want it to easily fit.
Yeah. I'm gonna clarify that. All right, I have a few Q&A.
I bet tons of people have many jeans in months.
Yeah, right now is not the time. All right, so a few Q&A. My 6-week-old baby has no problem latching, but every time I feed her, she gets so much milk that she just projectile vomits afterwards. What can I do to prevent this?
Yeah, so that is a lot of that is like you have an oversupply or a fast letdown. And how I was talking earlier about how a lot of times I just move baby a little bit and it fixes the problem. That's with this too. My favorite position for mom is called the lean back one. And that helps gravity. Gravity does all the work there. So you
Gotcha.
lean back in a comfortable recliner on your bed, however you kind of like to sit while you're watching TV, that real comfortable position. And baby will be pretty much on top of your breast, and that prevents the milk from just gushing down baby's throat.
Okay.
And that will help with the vomiting, excessive spit up, milk leaking out of baby's mouth. I've seen that too, even with a good suction. That really helps with a lot of that, and it's the most comfortable. You're not holding your baby up in that position, and that helps the relationship a lot.
Perfect. Okay, my next question is, I'm planning on using formula to supplement breast milk. How can I introduce formula to my 2-month-old, and should I be mixing it with breast milk?
So introducing formula, the taste will be a little bit different, so you would want to see how the taste works. But when I have this question come up, I kind of explain it the same way as I do when you're introducing whole milk to a 1-year-old, to make sure baby doesn't get constipated with the whole milk, and then also making sure that they're liking the taste. You do mix the two. The one thing to be careful when it comes to the formula is that you always want to do formula in 2-ounce intervals if you're doing the powder, because that is the correct mixing for the formula. It helps prevent from any type of infection that could come from powdered formula, and also making sure they're not getting too much calories, not enough concentration, all those different factors. So what I recommend with that is that you make the formula first, and then you add in your breast milk on top. Depending on how much milk baby typically gets out of feeding will determine how much you put in the bottle. So say baby drinks 4 ounces at each feeding, you do 2-ounce formula, 2-ounce breast milk, and then you would slowly decrease the formula down. If you are kind of like at an odd number, it's okay to make breast milk, make formula for a 24-hour period, but after that 24 hours, you need to throw it away. You put the formula in the refrigerator for those 24 hours, so you would just make a bulk amount. Say you estimate your baby needs 8 to 10 ounces of the formula. You make it into a big like mason jar. You just pour what you need into the bottle and mix it with the breast milk, and then kind of slowly decrease the breast milk down if you're wanting to do full formula bottles at one point for baby, or you can keep mixing the two together, but it's not a problem mixing them together.
Okay, so last but not least, I do have some questions about relactating. What is relactating and how can you do it?
So relactating is when you have stopped feeding your baby for whatever reason, and then you decide you want to back. Like you mentioned, some people do it because of cancer treatments, because breast milk has been proven to help with cancer. You were sick for a period of time and you needed to stop, and now you're wanting to do it again. You wish you never stopped in the first place. They're not doing too well on the formula and you want to go back. There's hundreds of reasons why someone would want to relactate. How you do that, it works best with if you have a pump, because you want that constant stimulation to the breast for your body to know that you need to make milk again. One of the great things about our body is that once you make milk the first time, you always have the ability to make milk in the future, because you always still have some there. So you would just pump, or you would try to put baby back to breast frequently, and that will help increase that supply back up to where you want it again. Sometimes your doctor can prescribe you certain medications that can potentially help increase supply to help, and your lactation consultant will work with your doctor on that, increasing your fluids. That's kind of when you would try all those like herbs and different what ifs to help increase you to make it at a faster rate. But really, it's just re-stimulating the breast whenever you want to.
And basically it can be any time. So like, let's say for me, it's been a year since I pumped. So, and I wanted to do it. Is that still possible?
Yep. The longer you go, the more work it will be.
Yeah.
So I've worked with adoptive parents before for making having the woman lactate, because she has the ability to, and so any woman can do it at any time. Some cases would be a little bit more work for you than other cases, but yeah, any woman can do it, even if they haven't physically had a baby in their body before.
Wow. I mean, I think the human body is just magical, especially the female body.
Yes.
Abby, I just want to thank you so much for answering all our questions and for your time. Absolutely, we'll be having you back on here because there's so much to cover, right? Like covering it, we can't even cover it in 2 sessions. So thank you for your time. I will be linking your website and all the resources that you shared on the show notes. And you know, I do have a list of questions that I ask all the people I interview, and I don't give you the questions ahead of time because I don't want you to overthink it. Are you ready?
Yeah.
These are my fast 5. All right, so I'll ask you the question and you just fill in the blanks.
Okay.
First question is, how I'm changing women's lives?
I am changing women's lives by having them reach their goals and making it simpler for them.
Awesome. One word to describe my journey.
My journey has been interesting.
Okay. Self-care is?
The utmost important thing.
Awesome. My role model is?
Ooh. My role model is my mom.
Awesome. All right. My big scary goal is?
To have my business completely full time.
Awesome. I think you're going to accomplish that very easily. Your
Thanks.
passion, your drive, that will get you a long way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on.
I am so grateful that you were able to do this with me. And, you know, I'm passionate about breastfeeding because it's something that I struggled with. And I want moms to be empowered and informed. Especially I think in the medical field, you know, we go back to work and pumping is not as easy as it is for corporate employees, for example. And you know, you're choosing between caring for other people versus making milk for your child. And so I'm passionate about making it, like you said, simple, uncomplicated, but possible.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful for your time and all your resources that you provided us. So thank you.
Anytime.
Perfect.